Scatological humor and CGI bears are the name of the game in another brutal episode of Golden Kamuy. Here is my challenge to all of my viewers who are over the age of 21. Turn this episode into a drinking game. Whenever they bring up poop, shit, or anything scatological related, take a big old drink. The CGI bears return in this episode. That's right, I was really kind of hoping that the backlash from the fanbase about the incredibly awkward-looking bears who look like they clash with every other character in the series would be wholly removed from Golden Kamuy. But no, CGI bears are here to stay. The good news is the scene that they're used in this episode is used sparingly, and it's also one of the most brutal scenes that I have seen from the entire series. This was also a pretty good episode of Golden Kamuy, which delved a little bit more into Asirpa's Ainu clan, learning a little bit more about their culture and what they actually think of wildlife and how they use them and implement them into their very own culture. While all of that is going on, we also have a couple of different factions which are coming together to try and find these people with tattoos so that they can find the gold. Everybody has completely different motivation, with of course Sugimoto wanting to help out his dead friend's wife. We have the 7th Division, which is led by a very crazy man who has suffered severe brain damage, and this has caused him to go insane, makes him look really creepy, and he has no qualms with biting your finger off if you actually manage to piss him off. On top of that, we also have the introduction of Hijikata the Samurai in this episode, and another villain by the name of, I think, Ukashiyama? At least I think that's how it's pronounced. I'm probably mispronouncing it, but he's introduced at the end of this episode. So you have all of these factions which are going after all of these people and trying to hunt down the treasure, and honestly, it's really solid stuff. But most of this episode is a setup to getting Sugimoto and Asirpa back to her village so that Sugimoto can sort of absorb a little bit of what Ainu culture is all about. And honestly, it was very eye-opening for me, as I know next to nothing about Ainu culture, and my big takeaway from it is that it's strikingly similar to Native American culture in many senses. The way I've sort of looked at it is the Ainu are kind of like the Aborigines people of Japan. At least that's kind of the way that I see it as. The people of the woods, of the mountains, who respect nature and have their very own distinctive culture, separate from all of the modern Japanese culture. Although the thing about Asirpa that's very interesting is that she considers herself a modern Ainu woman and doesn't necessarily cling to a lot of things from the past, but still doesn't want to forget them either, which immediately makes her a pretty enduring character and someone that the viewer can get behind. That and the fact that apparently before her name Asirpa, her real name was Grandfather's Asshole. Out of context, this probably makes no sense, but we actually learn in this episode that Ainu people are not actually given their true name until a couple of years, and we get to see what their personality and their accomplishments are like. Until then, they are given very messed up names, and they say that they're supposed to be really messed up because it wards off demons and such. So you have people with names that are related to, like, poop and shit, and of course, Asirpa being Grandfather's Asshole, which is just really fun to say out loud, to be perfectly honest. But the Ainu themselves, despite the fact that they do seem kind of like they're isolated from people, are very curious about modern culture and don't even mind sharing their culture with other people, which is why they've decided to let Sugimoto stay in their village for the night and stay warm and have a nice meal. It's a really tender moment, and it's just great to see like this culture of Japan that honestly I've been completely in the dark about. I knew next to nothing about Ainu culture until I actually started watching this show, and I have to say it's striking and fascinating to say the least. But the main reason that they are actually going to the village is because Sugimoto found this baby bear, and apparently in this village when they find baby bears, they bring them back to the village, they raise them to get nice, big, fat, and plump, and then they send them to the gods, which is to say that they kill them and consume them. This is something that Asirpa has never really enjoyed, as she gets too sentimentally attached to these creatures, and she just can't find herself to actually kill them. And the reason that they actually have this baby bear is because in the beginning of the episode, both Asirpa and Sugimoto are running away from the 7th Division soldiers, which are skiing down a mountain, by the way, which I didn't even know they actually did that back in the day. But they end up separating from one another, and Sugimoto is confronted by these 3 soldiers who are getting ready to kill him, and then he jumps into a bear's den, which of course causes it to wake up and just completely massacre these 3 soldiers. And the way that they display this is not overly violent, but some of the imagery is honestly just disturbing in the best ways possible. Like, the first guy basically gets his entire face ripped off. The other guys just get completely destroyed and ripped to shreds, and the final shot you see is of this soldier who's continuously just unloading his pistol into this dead bear, and then they do a close-up and you realize that this is the soldier that's had his face ripped off, and it's still hanging from his actual face. You see the skin and all of the detail, and it's just... it's really freaking messed up. You have a Serpa who's also going up against this one soldier who luckily ends up getting attacked by that white wolf from the very first episode, which seems to have some sort of weird symbiotic relationship with the Serpa as well. She's not only able to calm it down, but she even treats it sort of like a normal house pet and a dog, which is pretty funny. But the soldier actually does manage to survive, and he plans to get revenge on this wolf. He wants its silvery white fur for himself. If there's one thing I've taken away from the 7th Division, is that these guys are hardcore, and they almost seem like they've sort of seceded from the Japanese government, and they're sort of like doing their very own thing. I'm guessing that during the whole Russo-Japanese War, something really bad happened for them to want to go off and do their very own thing, but still continue to work as something of a military unit. The character of Surumi, though, Lieutenant Surumi, or Rami, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. Again, some of the names in the show are kind of difficult for me, I do apologize. The scene where this other commander comes over to him and he gets really mad about him bringing his soldiers out into the wilderness, he just ends up getting his finger bitten off, he spits it right in his face, they kill him, and then they get ready to bury him. These guys are friggin' hardcore. It's really just hardcore throughout the entire episode. The final scene in particular features a scene that's disturbing and funny, where we have this brand new character who is, I'm guessing, one of the people who has the tattoos. Why am I saying I'm guessing? He totally has the tattoos all over his body, and Hijikata tries to stop him. He's having sex with this woman, and they end up getting into a tense confrontation. Before they fight, he actually, like, picks up this woman and, like, throws her through one of those, like, wooden, like, sliding doors. It happens so fast that you almost don't notice it, but these 2 characters are going to work together as they realize you don't necessarily have to kill people in order to get the patterns. You can simply draw them with ink. And again, you have all these factions which are coming together and trying to find this gold and these lost soldiers. Really, the premise itself is what's keeping me going. Some of the execution, however, leaves a little to be desired, and that brings us to the rundown of this episode of Golden Kamuy, which was highly entertaining, but still not a perfect episode. The CGI bears... really, that's the only blemish on the entire series, as far as I'm concerned. Just, they look so out of place. They didn't look any better in this episode, but at least the scene with it was just so metal, with the dude getting his face ripped off. Just really intense stuff. I have a feeling that this is a show that probably in the manga format is probably like 10 times more violent just from what we see. Like the scene where the bear comes out, he attacks the dude, he hits his face, and then his gun spins around, ends up shooting another guy directly through his chin and out the back of his head, and then the massacre just begins. It's just utter chaos from beginning to end, and still managing to feel incredibly cold. This is such a cold series. They do a great job of making everything just seem so isolated and scary out in the middle of the woods, while also somewhat mystical as well, and a lot of that is owed to the Ainu and their culture, the way it's displayed in this episode. It's really surprising. That and just all the poop jokes. Just from the beginning of the episode to the very end, they never freaking stopped the entire time. Asirpa believes that miso basically looks like crap, and you know what? I love Japanese culture. I even love Japanese food. I'm not a fan of miso soup. I totally know where she's coming from. Don't put the poop in your soup. Well, otherwise, this was a pretty solid addition to the series, which is building upon the world, the new characters, the bears, the poop. It's all there if you want it, black and white, clear as crystal, and it's pretty freaking awesome. That's why I'm going to give this episode right here a 4 out of 5. I am going to knock it down just a little bit, as it was a little slow this episode, and that CG bear just looked like crap. I can't get around it, but at least the scene that it was attached to was pretty freaking awesome. Still, a 4 out of 5 is pretty freaking good, so you should definitely be checking out this show if you're looking for like a Japanese-styled Western hunt for gold. So there it is. That's my thoughts on the episode. I'd love to get yours. Tell me all of them in the comment section below, and tell me what you hope to see from the rest of the Golden Kamuy anime series. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. I'll see you guys next time. And as always, stay down now, baby.